Hello guys and gals, me Mutahar, and today I want to talk about something known as the Nth Room. Now ladies and gentlemen, when we talk about the Deep Web, which is one of the most popular things I've ever done on my channel, it's a series where I looked at some of the darker sides of the internet. I went to the Deep Web, which I access through Tor, and on the Deep Web we looked at a lot of funny websites, goofy websites, bad websites, but there was a lot of hoaxes on there, and hundreds of websites that to this day I still can't access anymore. It was really a part of my channel where I splunked through the dark web, and the reason why it wasn't as prevalent as it is now is obviously towards the tail end. By episode 200, it tends to get very, very stale. You tend to see pretty much everything on the dark web. Nowadays, most of the deep web, as far as general exploration goes, is usually illegal drug websites that you can go to and purchase illegal material. It's nothing entirely brand new. Gone are the days of looking at crazy ARGs and the funniest of hitman websites. It's all just generally illegal stuff being shared around, and in some cases, it is just illegal material. But that said though, ladies and gentlemen, one of the biggest mysteries on the dark web was something known as the Red Rooms. Now, Red Rooms are a myth on the dark web that involve the capture of a person, and anonymous individuals use anonymous cryptocurrency to purchase access to these illegal, spooky streams where they can watch someone get harmed, and if you pay enough money, you can unfortunately participate in real evil horror. But of course, most popular deep web hoaxes involve the rooms where, again, one of the cases where soldiers had basically captured insurgents and forced them to eat bacon and do terrible things to them. But of course, has any proof of this ever materialized? No, it hasn't. But of course, the Red Room idea exists all over YouTube, TikTok, and whatnot. And of course, the feasibility of streaming HD footage over the dark web is laughable at best. But I think a lot of this comes from a historic love for this sort of Red Room snuff, situations. Back in the early 2000s, there used to be movies like 8mm, and of course video games like Manhunt, where the concept of snuff footage was basically popularized. See, back in the day, there was generally an idea that VHS files, or VHS tapes, were being shared around with really illegal material on them. And while that was true in certain cases, in general senses, it was kind of mostly an urban legend. It was a myth that sort of spooked people out. But of course, when it comes to the deep web, that myth is alive and dandy. But today, we're not looking at that myth. We're looking at a situation where a real-life deep web, or not, a real-life Red Room occurred. It just wasn't on the dark web. It was actually through an app you can download on your phone right now. Now, the Nth Room case is one that is incredibly popular, and if you're somebody that follows South Korea, you would probably have heard of this case right now, especially if you're into true crime situations. Now, I want to start off by saying I'm not here to talk about the real nitty-gritty specifics of this. I don't want to get too graphic as per YouTube's terms of services, and also, it's not really worth getting into the real nitty-gritty of the situation. It's worth looking at this from an umbrella term. So ladies and gentlemen, back in 2018, in South Korea, an individual by the pseudonym of God was active on an encrypted social media service known as Telegram. Now, for anybody that doesn't know Telegram Messenger is a private encrypted messaging service that you can download for Android, iPhone, Mac, and PC/Linux right now. And of course, if you look at it, they're basically a group that is a messaging service with a focus on speed and security. And of course, it's for people who want fast, reliable messaging and calls. And of course, for people who want to make super large groups with up to 200,000 members at a time. And of course, it comes with extra privacy. So for people who want to be able to send messages without law enforcement agencies, or people getting access to their messages in any capacity, can freely share on the internet. Now, listen, I want to start off by saying I am not going to demonize Telegram or Signal or any encrypted messaging service. Encryption is important. Privacy is an important right that I feel people should have. And look, this kind of stuff is great for countries where you have terrible regimes, oppressive regimes, journalists who need to be able to send files and correspondence to people without having government agencies look at them. And of course, if you live in a place where you just want privacy when the government is so willing to violate it in any possible second. Now, that being said, when you have privacy-focused services, that's always when criminals get involved and use this for really nefarious purposes. Now, on the super light end, you've probably noticed Telegram channels when I covered cryptocurrency scams. So what'll happen is criminal groups will utilize thousands of individuals in a cryptocurrency focused Telegram server and signal pump and dumps in altcoin groups, right? These people can bankrupt individuals in a matter of seconds, minutes even. In the cybersecurity circle, we've looked at Telegram groups that would be used to distribute malware or signal attacks. We even looked at a time where the height of the war, the height of the Ukrainian conflict, Russian groups would pretend to make Ukrainian groups and distribute DDoS software that would actually be used to attack Ukrainian servers on behalf of Russia. It was a wild situation, and one where I've constantly said, never download malware or get involved in cyber warfare if you have no understanding of that situation. Just don't even jump into it, period. It's wrong. It's not something that the average Andy should even think about, because your data is on the line, your privacy is on the line, and you may be complicit in actual criminal activities that can morally hang on you. But again, in this situation, it wasn't cryptocurrency related. Well, it kind of was. It wasn't, malware related. It was just a depraved situation where thousands, tens of thousands of people were involved in sharing illegal material, some of them involving minors. So the nth room was a series of rooms that were numbered in a number. So you had room 1, room 2, room 3, room 4, etc., etc. And the idea was these were created on Telegram sequentially, and people were invited into these and basically distributing illegal material, all for, $1,000-something for entry. Now, the whole story first broke out on a newspaper website in Korea known as Hankyoreh, where it was revealed that numerous victims had their personal photographs leaked, and in some cases the people would be minors, and then they were being distributed en masse over Telegram. And because of the anonymous nature of this platform, law enforcement agencies had a pretty hard time identifying just who was behind and what was going on initially when this dropped. Now, as we read through some of these Korean publications and news agencies, I want to stress by saying that we are using machine learning, so we are using machine translation. So if there are issues in the Korean that we read that's translated to English, it's because of that actual Google Translate. That's just how it works. So in this entire thing posted 2019, translated to Juvenile Telegram Secret Room Illegal Hangover Video. So according to the situation, what they basically said, and again, this is a translation, a 10-year-old student, in some cases the minors were as young as 10, if not 9 years old, were basically opening a secret chat room in Telegram, and it was confirmed that there was juvenile footage being distributed in this situation. And thousands upon thousands of people were involved. Now, according to actual private investigators, the internet investigators, the investigative journalists, if you will, they had ended up stumbling into some of these actual Telegram channels by themselves, where images were being distributed and thousands upon thousands of files were being transferred around. And over tens of thousands of people were active on multiple different chat rooms, all related to this entire group out there. So according to this actual translation, the slaves being meticulously, the process of children's fall into slavery, which again was coercion, was passed through Gad's mouth, and Watchmen made it widely known. Summing up the description, the offense was mainly done on Twitter. A message was sent after screening a minor who posted a relatively high-water post. It's a way to scare while impersonating the police. Since the report of the post was received, GatChat entered a new report on the link sent to propose to respond to the investigation, or I will contact my parents, added threats. Now, obviously, the translation is tough, but these people would basically go on tier 1 social media networks like Twitter, Facebook, or anything where tons of minors are active and just start coercing things out of them. And it's through this that, unfortunately, these people were preyed upon. Now, I want to also say that, again, this is one of the reasons why I'm so active in any young person in my life using social media services like this. I like to make sure that people who are that young are talking to people they know in real life. Because here's the thing, if you haven't met somebody in real life, you have no idea what they do. And it's easy to say, hindsight being 2020, when you're a minor getting involved in talking like this, it may seem that sometimes if these people have the upper hand, you might have your information completely thrown up into a loop. And at that moment in time, the hole just keeps digging and digging and digging and digging. And unless you get help from an adult, which you shouldn't feel ashamed to seek help from an adult or talk to a law enforcement officer. It's only going to get worse. These people relied on bullying, extortion, and whatnot, especially on minors, in order to get sick material to share around with people all through these Telegram channels. Now, while God was one of the ringleaders in operating these first networks, the actual way that people were brought into this was something known as the Godam Room, which was kind of like an entry level into accessing all these other layers of Telegram hell, where all these materials were distributed. And the person involved on that was an individual known as Watchman. Now, Watchman was a guy that basically served as the advertiser, the person that corralled individuals into these telegrams, distributed them to the main servers, and of course was somebody that was advertising the links and whatnot. Again, this is an enterprise of individuals. It wasn't just one person, it was multiple people, and there was a lot of money actually being involved into this, to the point where it was no cheap endeavor. This was a serious black market that unfortunately facilitated the use of multiple different criminals to operate and facilitate. Now, by the end of this entire ordeal, it ended up being around 100 victims, over 100 victims, to which unfortunately a quarter of these victims were minors. And again, what was shocking was the finances, the amount of money that ended up being involved. Now, the actual speculation about this is a little wild, okay? According to Quartz, when they were talking about, reporters at Kukmin Libo observed 25,000 users across 30 chat rooms. Now, $1,200 was basically exchanged to get access to a few nth rooms, as those rooms are called where content extorted from underage victims was uploaded in real time. To gain access to these primary outlets, one had to prove themselves in a secondary gateway chat room by uploading their own abuse content and sharing misogynistic comments. According to the Korea Cybersexual Violence Response Center, they also said that it counted at least 260,000 users in 56 chat rooms where users shared extorted content, as well as spy cam footage and, of course, photos of various acquaintances. Some of that content was created by those users themselves, to which some even involve deepfake and artificial intelligence, to which, again, when fake content is made and shared around, it can only serve as a harmful thing for, again, the women involved in the situation. So according to the report here, each of the 8 nth rooms hosted videos that were extorted from 3 to 4 different actual girls, blackmailed by, again, the operators for the situation. These people, their whole sole existence was to basically capture as much information, as much photo evidence as they can, just to distribute. The girls were often runaway teenagers who were active on chat apps like Twitter and engaged in, of course, the act of sexting online. The chat room operators contacted these girls through those accounts and then promised them quick and high-paying modeling gigs. They were then directed to a Telegram account where an actual individual, an abuser, had extracted names, phone numbers, addresses, friend lists, and of course photographs from them, to the point where they were blackmailed and extorted into filming themselves, and it sent images. In fact, in some cases, it did reach actual red room levels of torture, where people were actually harming themselves on camera just to distribute in these massive channels. And I say massive because tens of thousands of users were existing, and at a price point of $1,200 each, that's a lot of money to be making on a very depraved black market like this. Now, unfortunately, when money like this is involved, the people just keep growing. And in this case, the real ringleader behind this situation was another individual known as Doctor, or Boxa. Now, this person was also charging $1,200 USD for these Telegram channels where a flurry of this content was being distributed around in such a depraved way. Now, the way that this was initially uncovered was through those investigative journalists who basically were able to capture those real photographs of this situation basically occurring in real time. People who were, again, on the front cutting edge of infiltrating these networks and sharing those initial feeds, those initial screenshots. Now, of course, these screenshots are being shared around. Obviously, it's all in Korean, and I can't really read any of it. The images, obviously, this report is obviously blocked off, and that obviously makes sense. But of course, you can see these people were just part of this situation, sharing things around, sharing constant photos, images, and getting people involved into this situation. It was these people that were all involved in trading all of these images and whatnot. And of course, Doctor was one of those people that was involved in facilitating this entire group. And when the floodgates opened, obviously an entire national outrage was brought up, and an entire petition, which over 5 million people had ended up actually signing, going to the government of South Korea. You actually had the law enforcement respond by basically saying, listen, the police commissioner straight up says that they will respond to this, a rigorous investigation of participants and disclosure of newcomers. And he agreed with over 5 million people and urged the government's rigorous response with deep concerns about digital crimes, such as the spread of them and whatnot. So again, while the doctor's case is a cruel and shocking crime that takes away from children and youth and various women. So the cops had to respond because obviously when the situation blew up this hard, there was no way that it was going to just be completely swept under the rug or ignored any longer. Now, these journalists ended up finding this all the way back in the day. It wasn't until, tons of actual reports had to go to South Korea's actual emergency police line before they started to act on the situation and actually look in and apply legal police resources to truly unmask these people. So for a while, Doctor, Watchman, and God remained anonymous figures in this entire evil scheme on the internet. And it wasn't until these people ended up being captured that their names were revealed. So for instance, God ended up being Moon Hyung Wook, who ended up being at the time a 24-year-old individual who had basically coerced 21 women and girls into sharing 3,800 explicit videos on the internet. And of course, initially, this person had, I believe, a 34-year prison sentence, which was upheld by the Supreme Court. So it made sense for having this entire situation play out the way that it did. Now, of course, if you thought this sentence was really hard, the lead in the situation, Doctor, was known as Cho Ju-bin. Now, Cho Ju-bin, this scumbag over here, ended up being arrested and serving 40 years, from my understanding, in prison. All right, so these were landmark cases where obviously the government wanted to make a huge example out of them. For instance, at the time this was actually reported, an entire petition was revealed, and 5 million people had signed it just so the police could unmask and reveal individuals who were involved in distributing and participating in any of these nth room circles out there. Of course, even beyond all of it, the people that were hypebeasting it, the initial advertisers, Watchmen, ended up getting 7 years for distributing links to these nth room services out there. According to KBS World, a South Korean court ordered a 7-year prison sentence for a man convicted of sharing in a Telegram chat room links to other rooms that distributed obscene materials. The actual individual was identified as Jian, who, again, even police had to question if they even ever regretted their crimes, because they referred to a past conviction of charges of distributing indecent photos of a woman that had him sentenced to a year in prison with a stay of execution for 3 years. So yeah, these people were straight up scumbag criminals that actually didn't have any remorse. So for the jail sentences that they were getting, I consider them to be too light. And in some cases, even prosecutors consider multi-decade sentences too light. Because of the severe nature of the crimes, some of the prosecution did in fact argue for over or at least reaching life imprisonment, if anything. But of course, because offenses ranged in the first time for, I believe, Doctor, the South Korean courts did not go the full life imprisonment, as sad as that sounds. Now, of course, because of the severe nature of all of this, it wasn't just these people that would satisfy the angry, rightfully angry public of South Korea, and in fact, even the world. Because at this moment in time, even government agencies started working with payment processors to identify individuals who were participating on this. Because it was all done through cryptocurrency, we all know the blockchain never lies. Men lie, women lie, the blockchain does not lie. So in this situation, even the country's cryptocurrency regulators and banking firms worked with law enforcement to identify 40 paid members by looking through electronic wallets to see if the money that was moved could have been connected to these Telegram services. And it was also important to use this to identify just how much money was being traded on this specific black market. Because again, as depraved as what had happened over here, the main incentive was obviously the ability to make money. Obviously, there's an element of power and the ability to lord that power over the most vulnerable in our society, children in some cases. But again, it all came down to exchanging crazy amounts of money. This is a very, very evil black market that was occurring all through, public channels for the most part. Now, one thing I want to mention is while the Nth Room has a lot of talk about the deep web being involved, because of the nature of the dark web, as you know, websites keep going up in a matter of weeks, right? A website that could be up one day could be gone 48 hours later. And while it was apparently alleged that there were blogs on dark web sites, which wouldn't be hard to believe, that is how people were linked to. But ultimately, the brunt of what it seems where the actual crimes that occurred was not on the dark web. It was, again, through publicly available social media applications like Telegram. This wasn't done on some deep web social media service. This was done through Telegram, and in some cases, the children were being communicated to on sites like Twitter or any tier 1 social media network. It could have been fucking Roblox. It could have been anything. It could have been Facebook. It didn't matter. This all happened plain as day on the clear web, as sad as it sounds. Now, in some cases, law enforcement even got more involved, and through financial auditing and, of course, further tracing the 3,000 people that were identified, over 3,000, it was apparently 200-something convictions that were basically being delivered in this situation. And again, I hope more and more get delivered. I hope anybody involved in this ends up suffering some serious, serious time. Now, again, because of the money involved, there also ended up being copycat situations. It wasn't just the doctor. It wasn't just, again, God. There could be other people involved in facilitating this. It was scary to know that over tens of thousands of people were involved in the distribution and participation of these rooms to begin with, paid rooms no less. This is something that sparks a pretty scary trend in the culture of South Korea and, of course, in certain Asian countries in general. But again, it's a culture that we hope shifts over time. There is no room for this kind of content to exist. And one of the reasons I talk about it is because it's something that still blows me away. I don't really see a lot of people discuss this situation because obviously it happened outside our scope and maybe we don't talk about it as much. But it is one of those things where whenever I hear red rooms, I think about, actual red rooms that exist. One of the things that people always say is, Muda, what scares you? Ghosts? Apparitions, monsters, and no, none of that scares me. What scares me is what human beings can do to each other. The capacity of horror that we can inflict for personal financial gain always is the scariest thing on top. But ladies and gentlemen, let me know what you think about this in the comment section below. This is the story of the Nth Rooms, the internet's actual red room. And it wasn't on the deep web. It was, again, through an application you could download on your mobile device and look at it through your heart's content, as sad and sick as that sounds. The people involved rightfully are serving multi-decade prison sentences, and anybody who gave any dime to this and distributed illegal material or at least facilitated and supported this, well, I hope the absolute worst. And one day, I hope you get your just legal desserts delivered right to your doorstep. But that being said, this is me, Mutahar, and if you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Just like if you dislike it, I am out.